Guys, so welcome to the 11th session of developing iOS apps with Swift. Basically, on that session, we managed to get to a point where um, we have a proper list, a character list, and we can navigate to the details of it. Right now, yeah, some characters have no descriptions, but when they do, basically, we show something for us. Like, for example, Warlock here. So what we're going to focus on today is on expanding this a little bit further, because right now we can only see this, and this is actually the same data that we're getting right from the original list of characters. So we may need to call another endpoint, make a separate REST call in order to fetch more information about certain characters. And basically, what we need to do is whenever we navigate to this screen, we need to trigger another load so that we can expand the information that is displayed here. All right, so with that said, let's begin. Let's work a little bit on what is going to happen on the services side. We have this character service that is taking care of only fetching a list of characters, but we may need to create another one that focuses on fetching only sole character detail information. So what we can do actually is replicate this so that we can save some time and we can make the adjustments. Right, so we can change the name. First of all, it should be called fetch character, and we can say we are expecting an ID. It's going to be an int. Why an int? Because basically the API is expecting that. So we're going to change the API REST endpoint here. And we're going to say we are going to pass the ID of the character. To remove the offset, because offset is not applicable to this endpoint specifically. But then we are already hitting the corresponding endpoint, but we are not transforming the data accordingly because the data is going to be very different. We're decoding based on the structure of a character response, which is expecting certain data and then certain character data. But then this may be a little bit more different. So in order to save some time, I'm going to bring the structures in real quick. All right. So we are introducing a few more types, like for example, the character data wrapper that is going to be representing the response, where it has some data. This has some character data container that has a result of an array of characters. And of course, this is going to bring a single character, but we still need to comply to this structure. And then the difference with this is the fact that we need to modify a little bit the concept of character, because we were not using before the concept of the ID. So we need to be able to read it from the original list. And we also need, because we are going to show a list of comics where the character shows up, we're going to represent this in here. List of comics where this character has appearances. So this is going to be a comic list. The comic list has this structure, and ultimately what we are interested in is on these item summary items that are going to have a name and a resource included. So we are very interested in this name, but we should probably fetch the rest of the information in case we want to use it later. All right. So since we already have the structure of the response, which is in this case the character data wrapper, we are just going to use it to decode the response of this fetch call. So instead of using character response like before, we use character data wrapper. And then we need to change the signature again of the fetch character, because this is expecting an array of characters, but we are expecting to return a single character details. So we're going to say this is going to deliver a character that may be optional because this may fail. So in this case, if this fails, we're going to return near because there's no data. And in this case, we're going to resolve not the list of results, but the first. If it's nil, that's okay, but at least we are delivering the corresponding type. All right, so we already have the fetch character with ID method here. So what we can do is basically use it on the corresponding screen. The screen we're talking about is a character data controller that we worked on in that session. And we can rely on this view did load in order to expand on the details of the character whenever we transition to this page. So a very bad practice is to load the information and then navigate. So usually what you should do is navigate to the corresponding screen with the minimum information you have, and then you can load more data in the meanwhile to expand on the user experience. So this is exactly what we're going to do here. We are going to rely on the original information that we were passed the character in, and then we're going to ask for more data in case there's more, so that we can display it and enhance the user experience. So we may want to create a separate function that basically take responsibility of installing all the data as it comes through. So we're going to call it reload, and this focuses on this. So every single time we enter to this page, we're going to reload the data. Then another thing we're going to do is use our new created service from the character service called fetch character with ID. But then we need a proper ID, and we don't know if we have it because it's an optional. So we want to create a guard here where we check whether our character has an ID or not. And if we do, we continue and use it here. Otherwise, we just return because there's nothing else to do. We're going to use the character ID, and we are going to resolve with a closure, so that whenever we get the character or a possible error, we do whatever is necessary to update the information. So we are going to ask here whether we have a character or not, meaning more information on the character. If we don't, we just return. But if we do, we want to deliver this to the main thread so that we update the UI. So we're going to use the dispatch queue to access the main, the singleton of the main queue, which corresponds to the thread the UI uses. And then we can run some async code on it. Part of that is going to be update the reference of the character. And then the second thing is actually update the UI, which is the method we just created apart. So we just need to call reload again. Okay, we already have this, but then this is like there are some poor memory management practices here. So what we are going to do is make sure that we capture lists with the reference of self, so that if this endpoint ever resolves whenever we don't have, we are not on the screen anymore, it just fails gracefully. So what we're going to say is, okay, if we have a reference of self, update the character. If we don't, that's okay. Insert here. And that's it. We already have that. Of course, we run the application. We will know that something is happening underneath. Then the problem is we are not showing any further information other than the one we already had, because reload data is just literally updated description and the image, and that's about it. So what we want to do now, well, let's run the application, make sure that everything is working at least. And then the second thing is going to be about enhancing the user experience, because the ultimate functionality of this app is that I want to be able to learn more about Marvel Comics characters. So there are a lot of characters that I don't know yet, and I want to be able to enter to their details and be able to understand where they come from and what comics they show up. So that's the reason why we modeled the concept of the comic summary, because we want to show a list of comics where this character shows up, so that I can learn about him or her. So what we are going to do now is introduce a new UI element on these details, which is going to be a table view, very similar to what we did before on the original list, but this is going to be way more simple. We're going to say we have a var representing a table view, which we're going to name comics table view. It's going to be a table view where it's just a normal one, nothing special about it. And then we are going to return it. Oh, sorry. Okay. And then we're going to run some configuration here. So table view actually isn't going to translate to advertising masks. So we're going to say false here. There's some other stuff to update, like for example, the data source. So we want the character details controller to be the data source and deliver the data to the table view. So what we can do is create an extension of the character detail controller and say this is going to be a UI table data source. So this is going to be someone's data source. And in this case, we're going to say table view dot data source equals to self. So this is going to complain because actually I'm creating this through a closure, so this doesn't have access to self. So in order for it to have access, we're going to say this is actually lazy, but it knows this is going to be started whenever the instance already exists. Hence, we already have a reference of self. And then we're going to call this closure in order for this to initialize the table view whenever we require. That being said, the next thing we're going to do is install it on the UI, because this right now is only initializing the UI element, but we are not really adding it to the UI. So what we're going to do is add it. And we're going to set the corresponding constraints, because of course we don't have manual constraints because we just disabled them. So we are going to add a few constraints for the table view, saying the top anchor is going to match the bottom anchor of the description if there's such. So we're going to use equal to, and we're going to say we're targeting description label dot bottom anchor, and we're going to have some padding of maybe 20. All right. Then we're going to do the same thing we did for description, so that it matches the width on both the leading and trailing sides. So I can just copy and paste this and just replace the target. And then finally, we're going to say the bottom anchor of the table view is going to match the bottom anchor of the screen. So we just say the bottom anchor a constraint equal to the view, the parent view bottom anchor. And that's about it. We already have a table view, except for the fact that if we run it, there's going to be no information because we have implemented the data source. The data source is the responsible of saying how many elements there are and what data is going to be displayed for each of the cells. So the first thing we'll need to provide is a method that tells how many cells we actually have. So this is going to be the number of rows method, where we're going to say this is actually going to be the character comics.items count. And if this results to be nil, we're going to say, okay, if there's no comics, no items, that means this is 0. So we use this operator so that this optional chaining, if this results to nil, no problem, we just return a 0, because that's all we need. We need an int. And then we are going to implement a function that basically delivers the cells put together with the corresponding data. And this is the same cell for row we have used before. So we just need to create a reusable cell, a just regular reusable cell. We don't need to create anything custom. We just need to print the name of the comic. And we're going to dequeue it so that we enhance the performance of the cells with a reusable cell. We can just use a comic cell, reusable cell, so that we always try to reuse the cells with this identifier. And if it can't resolve something with this because we have not created something like that before, we just result with a regular UI table view cell. That is just empty. Then we're returning. At this point, we are just delivering empty cells. We need to install the information so that it reflects the title of each of the comics. So what we are going to do is, first of all, ask whether we actually have a comic for this index path. So we're going to say if there's a comic that comes from the source of comics of the character, and there's something at this index path row, it's actually also optional, so we should probably change it here as well. And if we have a comic for this, we're going to install the information there. So we're going to update the text label. And we're going to say this is going to be the comic name. And that's it. If there's a comic, we just update the text of the corresponding cell. So this is going to be the amount. So whenever we enter this screen, we are going to call the services so that it fetches the character information. It's going to maybe succeed. It's going to install the information and it's going to reload. Except for we are not reloading a table view here, so we need to say every single time there's a reload, we need to say, okay, reload data on the table view, which means it's going to run again this function to understand how many comics we do have, and then it's going to run as many times as this returns this function so that it delivers every one of the cells, resolve any of the comics that are on the original data source, and install the corresponding type. Okay, so let's run. We have the regular list, but what happens if I want to learn more about I Am Warlock? Awesome. Okay, so we already have a screen where I have more information. I want to learn about this character, so I just have a list of all this. So yeah, this is it. We already have a working application where we explore the fundamentals of this. And of course, we are not following the best practices. There's too much to be done here when it comes to practices. We're barely even using MVC, and nobody uses MVC anymore. So yeah, in future opportunities, the idea is to be able to understand how we can better improve the architecture of our app so that we can make this code more testable, how we can provide snapshot testing, and maybe even start using more advanced features that allow us to create UIs in a more convenient way, like for example, Swift UI. As you can see, like creating UI here with UIKit is actually very manual, where you have to create every single component from scratch and then add it and then install it with the corresponding constraints. And this is not a modern concept. The modern concept is to be able to create UI elements and screens easily by using a declarative syntax. So Apple provided that by Swift UI, which is the most modern way of developing iOS applications. And along with that, there are more architectures and many more modern ways to write code right now. So this is basically the more fundamental way of creating apps for iOS. And yeah, this is where the series ends. So at this point, I would like to have you guys maybe give me some feedback or maybe questions that you may have at this point, or anything you have right now.
Yeah, hello. Well, thank you for everything. Just I wanted to just I wanted to I will have wanted to see a little bit more about Swift UI because
Yeah, for sure.
yes, it's very important to understand. Also, it's very important to understand how layouts are working low level. Well, it's low. It's very low level right now, and as you said, well, it's I will have wanted to see a little bit more high level Swift UI, how it looks like.
Yeah, for sure. And we can certainly create a different series of this with Swift UI. So the idea for this series was to be able to understand fundamentals. and the fundamentals are really about UI kit. So it's not like this is low level. It's more like there are two ways of writing UIs. One is a programmatic way, and the other one is a declarative way. Sorry, one is imperative, and the other one is declarative. This is imperative, and this was the original way of writing user interfaces. And most of the code out there are still using UI kit. So it's very important to understand what this behaves like. And whenever you're trying to write things that are meant to be more dynamic, UI kit is the way to go. If you're writing UIs that are meant to be a little bit more static, more standalone, Swift UI is the best solution. And yeah, for sure, we can create a different series later to talk about how refactoring this to Swift UI and how we can transform this to a more readable and convenient code for us as developers.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other question, guys? Okay, guys. So thank you so much for everything, and I hope you liked it. And I will certainly let you know whenever we open a new series to talk about how to refactor this to Swift UI. Thank you so much.